Hey everybody, and welcome to another Chairman of the Board ranking video. This is where I take a look at the last 5 new to me board games that I've played, and I rank and review them in order of preference. Now before I get into today's 5 games, I want to give a shout out to the show's sponsor, Keyenda.co.uk, who are my go-to online retailer, and if you use the link in the show notes or the QR code, then you can get 5% off your first order. At number 5, I have Dog Park. So this is a gateway level resource management contract fulfillment game where you are collecting resources and then trading them in against these dog cards. And the dog cards will give you points as well as trying to give you majorities when it comes to different categories for end game scoring. So there's a bunch of different types of dogs, and you want to have the majority of the most kind of lucrative ones. Also, whenever you fulfill one of these contracts, you'll kind of gain either a temporary power or an ongoing benefit, or even like an end game scoring opportunity that you can work towards. Like, for example, some cards might say, well, at the end of the game, if you have this spare resource, you get a point for every one you have. Or when you come to the resource collection phase, you can share spots with somebody else. So the game is pretty procedural, and it's very simple in each of those phases. First off, you're just drafting these cards, and then you can trade in your resources in order to complete these cards. And then you're going through this kind of little resource gathering game where you're going along this track where you can't go back on yourself, collecting the different types of resources. If you get to the end of the track before the other players, you'll get a little bit of a bonus. So there's this little bit of a game of chicken going on where if your opponent's going slow, you might want to go slow as well and mop up those resources. But you don't want to be caught off guard and get left with kind of negative points by finishing last. I thought the game order, or the phase order, was a little bit strange in this one, and it maybe diminished some of the excitement. So something I normally like in these types of games is that when you commit to your contracts and then you try and gain the resources, it kind of adds a little bit more tension. This one, you can kind of just complete contracts when you have the resources. So I thought that maybe took a little bit of the edge off the game, but it's, it's fairly straightforward stuff. Maybe the majorities are a little bit swingy and the powers are a little bit subtle, but again, I am coming from the perspective of quite a seasoned Eurogamer, so this isn't exactly aimed towards me as the kind of market audience, but I can see why people would like it. It's clearly tried to capitalize on the kind of wingspan buzz because it's got the same kind of aesthetic with those white cards and the sketchy animal drawings. So it's kind of trying to hitch onto that wagon, but it is different enough. It's not like the same type of game. But that being said, I think if you own Wingspan, you'll probably rather just play that one over this one. So I thought it was a valid effort, but ultimately it was a little bit toothless, a little bit maybe moribund, and not exactly exciting in any aspect. But I'm sure if you like dogs, that you're going to like it because there's tons of dog cards. And again, if you're much more of a casual audience, you want to play with almost non-gamers who like dogs, then they'll probably like this one. So that is Dog Park at number 5. At number 4, I have a party game with Word Slam. So a very simple word association style game, which is a genre I tend to enjoy, but I understand there's not exactly a huge demand for them, especially when it comes to YouTube content. But this one, essentially, you are playing in teams. Each team is going to get given a kind of a word they are trying to portray to their teammates to try and guess. But in this one, you can only communicate by using these predetermined cards, by slamming them down on the table, and maybe trying to build some kind of network or pattern with these words to try and break down what you're trying to say. It's quite clever with the kind of strings of sentences you can build, or the word association or tricks you can do. And if you've played games like Concept, you're going to understand what this game entails. So it's fairly straightforward stuff, lightning quick. If you want to play a quick, fast, funny, kind of frantic party game, and you do have enough players to have teams, then this one's worth a shot because I'm sure you can pick it up for very cheap. And that kind of filtering through your card system is quite fun, albeit a little bit chaotic. So that is Word Slam at number 4. At number 3, I have Paws Up. This is a very simple card game by Rainer Knizia, as you are managing a small hand of cards, and you're using this kind of initiative blind bidding system in order to claim other cards. So each card has I believe, a unique number on it, that you're going to reveal them at the same time as your opponents, and that's going to give you access to different cards first. So if I have the highest number, I get to take from the display before the other players do, but I will replace it with the existing card that I've swapped it with, meaning that my opponents can now access those cards. Now what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to build sets of animal types or kind of background types, and you are racing to get different sets. So basically, at the start of the game, there's going to be a huge display of these scoring cards that will diminish in points. So they start at high value, and of course, once somebody completes that contract, the next value card will be a bit lower. And of course, you're trying to beat your opponent to all of them, so you get all of the higher value cards. But the kind of twist on this game, or the trick of the game, is to try and bleed those scoring opportunities into each other so that you're scoring a couple at a time. That way you're much more efficient and can beat your opponent to the punch. Now, it's fairly straightforward stuff. I mean, I do like the idea of the chopping and changing of the cards. What I don't want anymore could be exactly what you're looking for. And of course, when the initiative order comes into play, that becomes a bit more interesting and a bit more exciting. But all in all, it's fairly standard contract fulfillment that we've seen time and time again. These kind of games where you're just collecting, cashing in, they don't normally do it for me anymore. Now this one's super slick, smooth, and it's got those additional little ideas that I do appreciate. But overall, it just feels like a like a Splendor-esque style game, and those are a bit boring to me now. So despite me objectively thinking this game is well designed, and again, I do love that incentive to be as efficient as you can, to be kind of one of the cool tricks and kind of hooks about this game. And of course, it's all cutesy artwork as well, so that might be appealing to you. But all in all, I just left the game feeling a little bit, maybe a bit neutral on it really. I didn't really feel excited by it, just by enjoying the process. By the time it was finished, it felt like that was just another game that I played, and I don't really need to go back to it anymore. So maybe if you like these styles of games, it'll do it for you. But for me, it's just other things that I'm looking for at this time. So that is Paws Up at number 3. At number 2, I have Fountains. So this is a game that caught me by surprise really, because I did go in blind to this one. I'd never even heard of the game before playing it, but my girlfriend and I were in the States, and we went to a board game cafe, and they had this one in their library. So we thought we'll give it a go. It looks interesting at least. Now this is a tile placement game, but it's a multiple tier tile placement game where you're placing tiles on top of other tiles. And of course, as the name would suggest, you are building a decorative fountain. And you're doing that by placing all these different sized tiles. So you have like big tiles, small tiles, all different shapes that fit into each other, which can kind of fragment off these different tiles into multiple different pools. Now, some of the ideas in this game are really novel, and I thought were so fresh and original, especially when it came to this kind of jet system where only certain pools would be active if they have a jet stream going through them. And the way that works is that certain tiles will have the jet symbol on them, and that will kind of power tiles on the same level or lower levels, as long as there's kind of like an unbroken route of these little funnels that go through from fountain to fountain. And of course, as your fountain builds up, certain pools might not have access to a jet, meaning that that's kind of stagnant water, and that's going to kind of block your scoring opportunities. And I thought that was really cool. So not only are you trying to focus on scoring, you're also trying to keep your fountain alive by keeping those jets kind of going around your fountain. The way the actual game works is really straightforward, and it feels to me like a kind of a Euro game from 20, 30 years ago, where you're using this rondel system with different pawns, and each pawn represents a different scoring opportunity. And once these pawns go around the rondel and land back on their starting spot, that will trigger that particular scoring opportunity. And that'll be things such as these lily pads. If you have your kind of longest unbroken chain of lily pads will score points. The higher the tier they're on, the more points you'll get. There's the same thing but with fish, and they come in different colors, and if you activate the scoring, you can choose which color is going to score. And also the number of pools that you have is going to score as well. So as I said, you might have this big round fountain, and then you might put like a diamond fountain in the middle, and all of a sudden that one round fountain becomes 5 separate pools. But of course, that's much more difficult to power, and you need to have that jet stream. So I thought that was really cool. I mean, the table presence is great here. The actual production quality is quite interesting as well, as you have these kind of foamy tiles. They're kind of nice to play with. And I do like that idea of the scoring being controlled by the players. You know, if you know that you're falling behind on the lily pads, you might want to say, well, I'm going to skip over that scoring opportunity so that my opponent won't score it and get a jump on me. But at the same time, when you're moving these pawns around the rondel, that determines which tiles you have access to place into your own fountain. So a cool little blending of mechanisms there. All that being said, I did think that the fountain itself was a little bit congested. There's like 3 pawns there, and there's not actually that many spaces on the rondel, so you can kind of travel a bit too far at times, and it kind of felt a little bit plodding at times as well. So also, despite me again loving the fountain and the tile placement side of things, I thought that there was some missed opportunities to maybe up the complexity when it comes to the scoring. Now, the actual tile placement game is simple enough, but I wouldn't say it's pure gateway level because of that jet mechanism. And because of that, I would think that the players who would go for this game would probably want a little bit more meat on the bones when it came to the different scoring criteria. So this game was like 75% of the way there for me. I would just have liked to have seen that rondel system tweaked just a little bit so it wasn't so congested, and also maybe add a few more interesting scoring opportunities into the game to make you spin a few more plates. But that being said, I want to put a positive spin on this game. I did really enjoy it. I thought there were some great ideas, and for such a convoluted genre of game at the moment, there's so many tile placement games, and there's even more and more of these tile placement games where you're placing tiles on top of tiles. This one feels certainly distinct to a lot of the other ones, and that for me gets full credit. So that is Fountains at number 2. And finally, at number 1, I have Solstis. So it's quite rare for me to rank a Bruno Cathala game so high because his style normally clashes with my own taste. But there's something about Solstis that works for me. I find it very charming and just super pleasant to play. So this is a 2-player only tile placement game, although I think there is a solo mode. And in this one, you are trying to build up your big kind of mountainscape by placing these tiles. You're going to gain these tiles through this pretty interesting drafting system where you're going to play a tile from your hand. If there's a matching number or a matching color in the central display, then you can take those tiles and then you'll put them in your own personal mountain range. And the kind of unique thing about this game is that every single tile is unique and has its own distinct place on the map. So the mountain range kind of goes from wide and funnels up to a point. And what you're trying to do is you are trying to build your biggest kind of group of these tiles without breakages. So your kind of biggest grouping of tiles will score a point for each of them at the end of the game. Also, if you manage to trace a route from your base all the way up to these bonfires at the kind of pinnacles of the mountains, you'll get additional points. And whenever you build a square of tiles, you can place one of these bonus tokens onto your map, which will unlock further scoring or give you kind of one-off bonuses. And so on. So it's quite nice how this is only a 2-player game and you kind of look at your opponent's state of play and see that they might have the tiles that you need that would fill in certain gaps on your board, because again, every single tile has its own place. And the game is just very free-flowing, very smooth. It's kind of a very minor game, kind of, what's the word, like a slight game. It's not exactly huge swings in points or big exciting moments, but it's a game I think you can just settle into and just enjoy the process. And, I don't want to sell this as being like a big, grandiose strategy game or there being a ton of depth here. There isn't, but again, I just like the process of it and I think it's just fun. I do think it's a very fun game, and which is, I suppose, what we're all here for. Lovely kind of cartoony aesthetic. Reminds me a little bit of an older Kramer and Kiesling game called Sanssouci, where again, everything has its own place. And I think that's a concept that's not really been explored too much in the board game space. So it's nice to see that kind of theme or that idea being re-explored in such a streamlined and smooth game. The flow of the game can sometimes, maybe not the flow, but The restrictions can come into play a bit more as there are fewer tiles available in the middle, but they do come with some backup plans where if you don't have a matching tile, you'll get kind of one of these wild rainbow tiles and they can go anywhere on your map. Now they don't count towards your biggest clusters as in scoring points, but they can let you kind of bridge gaps and things where you wouldn't be able to fit things before. So there's always kind of a plan B in this game as well, and it doesn't have a mean edge to it. So again, if you want a more of a passive, maybe couples friendly 2-player game, this is a really good option. And it also plays lightning fast in only about 15 or 20 minutes, which I think is fantastic for a game like this. So that is Solstis at number 1. So there we have it, that concludes another video. Hopefully you have enjoyed it. If you have, please be sure to hit like and subscribe to the channel and check out my other content. But for everybody else, I'll see you next time on Chairman of the Board. Bye bye.